Hello, hello. Welcome to another installment of Cage's Comments. Please like, rate, and subscribe. I am Alex Cage. The NBA draft at time of recording is tomorrow. And so I wanted to give some thoughts on what I think the Spurs should do at 20 and then some things for the rest of the league as well. The Giannis trade that is supposedly going, the deadline that the Bucks have given is the draft. I've been on Twitter, you know, in and on and off all day, seeing, you know, which team is it going to be. I have it open next to me just in case it happens whilst I am recording this. Seems like Boston is the front runner on a package centered around Jaylen Brown, which I got to be honest, real quick, I don't fully understand, but hey, is what it is. And then obviously we'll talk top of the draft and where I think mostly what I think the Spurs should do, honestly, but top of the draft as well, because you can't give a draft take without saying whether or not you think it's Debanza or Peterson or if you think it should be Boozer at the top and who you would take and whether or not you think Peterson's weird year at Kansas matters at all, if it bothers you or if you think it's just that it is what it is. So, starting with my team, the Spurs, they have the number 20 pick. They have 3 picks in the second round. So, I think going into this offseason, I said it during my recap of the finals for the Spurs that getting a true power forward is the number one objective in terms of improving the roster for next year. I don't think that a De'Aaron Fox deal is imminent. I'm not even sure that it's a great idea right now, given that A, his stock is probably as low as it can be. Also, B, I don't think I am probably not quite as sure that Castle has another level to get to, given his shot making and turnover problems. So I think the Spurs also are in a bit of an advantageous position, given that all of the rest players are still on rookie contracts, so they could probably let the Fox contract run one more year and kind of take a beat with that. But I will save kind of further thoughts for that for another video on the Spurs and probably before free agency, what I think they should and shouldn't do as we'll see more trades and signings and all that later. But as far as the draft is concerned, as I mentioned, I think true power forward is what the Spurs need. Now, that being said, that power forward does need to be able to provide some floor spacing. None of the Spurs guards, Fox, Harper, or Castle, are great shooters. Wemby, I think, will be a really good shooter one day. He shoots about 35% right now from 3. It is very important that the other 2 players on the floor that are not one of the guards and Wemby can space, can knock down corner threes that the Spurs generate a ton of, and knock them down at a high clip to provide spacing for the guards to attack, for Wemby to be able to attack, all of it. So I am not a fan of the idea that the Spurs should take someone like Koa Pete at 20 if he falls there, right? They need a true kind of floor spacer at the 4. If so, for the draft, I think what that means is the Spurs essentially have 2 options, which is they can take 20 and the seconds and probably a future first is what I would imagine it would cost, and try to move up into what kind of everyone believes is a loaded lottery and see if they can steal Yaxel Linderberg from Michigan before he reaches either OKC, who I think could use a true power forward type body on their team as well, or Golden State, who is all in on trying to maximize the last year or the last 2 years of Steph Curry, and therefore is probably not interested in one of the younger, higher upside prospects, right? That's kind of option one. If he starts to fall because he is 24 and most of the teams in the lottery are not in win now mode, taking a 24-year-old who ostensibly has hit kind of the top of his or is closer to maxing out his potential, is probably not super beneficial. For the Spurs, I think Axel would be a great fit. Um, he's 6'8", almost 6'9". He's long. He's a really good defender. He also um, I showed a ton of toughness, I think, playing on a bad knee in a national championship game, and is kind of ready made, in my opinion, to come in and be a role player. I don't know if he has much upside besides that. I don't really care if he has much upside besides that for the Spurs. I think he can absolutely be the exact kind of player that they need at that 4 spot. That being said, moving up from 20 into the lottery for in a year where the draft is as stacked as this is, I'm not sure if that's really doable. Like I said, I think it would take probably a first and another future first, but the Spurs don't have a ton of great future first because Atlanta didn't fall off a cliff the way they were supposed to when you get rid of Trae Young and then Jalen Johnson got hurt, a year ago or whatever, and then it turns out no, actually they're better without Trae Young this year, and they signed CJ and they, end up being the 6th seed and making the postseason. So because of that, the Spurs do have future picks. They have their own. They have Atlanta's. They have a swap with Boston in 28. So they have picks to give up, but I'm not sure exactly what that would cost given the value or the perceived value of those picks, and trying to get into the lottery of a stacked draft. So if they stay at 20 and they're just going to draft someone there, I don't think it is realistic to believe that they would be able to pick someone at 20 that is going to come in right here, right now, and be able to make a contribution that would matter and get them over the hump of being, the Western Conference champs to champs of the entire NBA. So when I look at that, then to me, it's about kind of looking at future contracts, future spots, and team building for, not next season, but the year after that, and maybe even the year after that, and who can develop into and fill the roles that the Spurs are going to need. And so, top of my list for that is still shooting and spacing outside of the Spurs, either dynamic duo or big three moving forward with Harper, Wemby, and Castle. Fox is eventually going to get moved, and being able to pair Castle and Harper with someone who can shoot the ball and play off of them, I think is going to be really important. So I like Cameron Carr out of Baylor. He's 6'4.5". He's got a 7-foot wingspan, and he's 37% from 3 in college with, if I remember correctly, a good free throw percentage as well. 80% from the line. Yeah, there we go. I was looking at it here as I'm looking at his draft profile. So 37% from 3, 80% from the line. Is this guy, I think, will be able to develop into a high-level shooter. I see him as kind of a Vassell and Champagnie, more of a Vassell because he's a little closer to Vassell's size, replacement, right? So Vassell's got 3 years left on this deal. I don't think the Spurs are like shipping him off, even immediately or anything like that. But playing the guard slash wing, to be able to come in and bring a shooter off the bench, or if the Spurs still insist on just starting 3 guys that are all 6'6", He can fit that role, I think, very well, and he can, just like Vassell, can give you a little bit off the bounce. I think Carr can too, and he's a hell of an athlete. Can finish above the rim as well. Almost assuredly at 6'5" and like 180 pounds, he's a little slight. You'd probably like him to put on some strength and some weight that'll help him defensively. And given that, A, Wemby can cover up for him, and B, the Spurs have, a good culture as that is in regards to their defense, I think they'll be able to develop. So I really like Cameron Carr, and if not him, then, and this may be, I've seen this player, Draft Ball R has him at the 22nd player in the draft. The Athletic has him in the 30s. So I've seen him back of half of the first, maybe early second. But Isaiah Evans at a Duke, again, 6'5", 6'6", 37% from three. Really good shooter. I think he's 40% for his career at Duke. They asked him to do a ton in terms of movement, shooting, catch, running them off screens, all of that. So I think him or Carr at that spot could really develop into the wings, the guards that play next to Castle and Harper, and sub in for Castle and Harper when one of them, right when you stagger those minutes to put spacing and secondary shot making on the floor. So that's kind of where I look at the Spurs is, those two guys, if you stay at 20, looking at, future development guys that you want to have step into roles when Fox or Vassell or Champagnie, if any of these guys end up having to be moved as this team gets more expensive in 2 years and 3 years when all of the extensions kick in for Wemby and Castle and Harper. That's what I think they should look at. The only thing that they really can't do, I should say, the other option is a Luke Kornet replacement. Again, probably not this year. Kornet's going to be 31. Or should it be going into his year 31, or his age 31 season, excuse me. And so the Spurs will need someone else to fill the backup Wemby minutes. Somebody maybe like a Chris Sinak from Houston would be an interesting pick right there. Again, not someone who I think would be ready to play immediately, but certainly someone that could develop into a good rim runner and rim protector behind Wemby, right? So you can certainly, I think, see that from him. So those three things are, I think, really the options for the Spurs. Sticking at 20, you're looking at developmental players, either shooters that can come in and complement Harper and Castle down the road, or someone that can replace Kornet as your backup rim runner and rim protector when Wemby is out. The only thing, or of course, I should say, trading up for Yaxel if you want to package, future assets. The only thing that the Spurs, in my opinion, really can't do is pick someone who is going to play the 1 through 4 that can't shoot, and picking up another guy who the jump shot is what needs to be developed. Their three guards are not reliable three-point shooters at this point in their career. I'm really, really hoping that Harper turns into one, but at the very least, turns into maybe a reliable mid-range shooter or something. But the Spurs, in order to complement the players that they have now and what Castle and Harper, I think, most likely project to, need to surround them with shooting. Period, point blank. Taking a guy, like I said earlier, like Koa Pete, who just, he would fit positionally. Yeah, he's a great defender. He does a lot of things well, and he just kills your spacing, right? Like, it's a Sochan situation, and they had to dump Sochan for nothing because his jump shot never developed. So, that is what it is, but that's really and truly the only thing that I really hope the Spurs don't walk away with. At number 20 is another developmental guard, forward, wing, who it's like, yeah, he does everything well, but he doesn't shoot. He can't space the floor. He can't provide that on offense because they have an excess right now of on-ball shot creators between Wimby and all the guards. They have an excess of defense because they don't really have a bad defender on the team. And then obviously it's, anchored by Wimby, but they do not have an excess of shooting, and they could really add that, even if it's going to be somebody that's going to add that down the line just to complement their two young guards. So that's what I think the Spurs should do tomorrow night. As far as the Giannis of it all with the draft, like I said, I've been checking on Twitter all day. It really does seem like we're gonna get a Bucks Celtics. Bucks, and I'm sorry that I'm pausing here because I'm reading a tweet from Mark Stein. He's responding to Bill Simmons talking about whether Hugo is going to be thrown in. Hugo Gonzalez is going to be thrown in because apparently the Bucks like him, but the Celtics don't. Hugo Gonzalez cannot be the reason you don't get Giannis. With all due respect to Hugo Gonzalez, uh, it, that would be a wild hill to die on if you're the Celtics. Yeah, we wanted Giannis, but we couldn't give up Hugo. Um, So anyway, first and foremost, the biggest thing I think on the Giannis deal is this should be the final lesson. Bradley Beal was a lesson. I think Dame, honestly, for Portland and for the Bucks, for some in some ways, was a lesson. But this should be the final lesson. You have got to trade these guys a year before you actually want to trade them, if you ever actually do want to trade them. But the moment Dame's Achilles popped, somebody with influence with the Bucks should have said, "Guys, we did everything we could. It just didn't work. But we got to trade Giannis. You would have gotten a much better haul. He would have had much more value, not just because he would have had 2 years left on his deal instead of one, which basically gives him a no trade clause and a veto to any of this because he can just say, I won't sign the extension, and then that team disappears. But also because you wouldn't have had another season of Giannis getting hurt during it, right? And now people worried about 31-year-old Giannis coming off another lower body injury. So first and foremost, any PSA, all of the teams, please, for the love of God, you got to trade him a year before you want to. You just have to. You are doing yourself, your fans, and honest to God, you're doing Giannis a disservice. Like no one wins really and truly in this scenario. I guess except for maybe the team acquiring him, but even then you don't win because your timeline to go win with Giannis is accelerated. And if you need to make more moves around the margins with Giannis, you have less time really to do it because you feel like you've got one less year of his prime. So that aside, these two teams, I find it fascinating that this is where we ended up. A 3-team deal with these teams makes way more sense, but I understand that if you're Boston or Miami, you're like, well, I don't want to be the third team that doesn't get Giannis, right? Like I didn't come out here fishing for Giannis. If you're Miami, to end up with Jaylen Brown, with all due respect to Jaylen Brown. So and obviously, Boston's like, yeah, we're not giving up Jaylen Brown to get Tyler Hero. If I were Giannis, I would have. I think you should have just said, I want to go to Boston. It's the only place between these two that makes sense from a basketball standpoint. You give Boston exactly what it is that they need, right? You can be the balance to their 3-point shooting. They can surround you with nothing but 3-point shooters. That will be the most open lane that you've probably ever seen in your life. And you can I would think they're probably the favorites to come out. They already are, I think, slight favorites over New York. I would imagine they'd be larger favorites uh, to come out of the East, and they might be, they might start rivaling what the kind of odds that the Spurs and OKC have. If you have a fully back and healthy Tatum, Derek White's obviously still there, and then you have Giannis. That is with Joe Mazzulla pulling the strings. That is a lethal combination, and would certainly probably be the team that I would pick to come out of the East and maybe win the whole thing. I still think Giannis is at worst the fifth best player in basketball. I still think he's really really good. I think he's still not quite as good, but good defensively and can help you out there. I'm a big Giannis guy, but from the Heat's perspective, I don't. I get why the Heat would want to do it. I don't really understand why you'd want to keep. I say it this way. I understand why you'd want to keep Bam over Tyler Hero. I'm not gonna stand up here and act like Tyler Hero is a better player in a vacuum. But to pair with Giannis, I think Tyler Hero is absolutely a better player to pair with Giannis, right? To fill the perimeter scorer, the Chris Middleton role, as it were, as opposed to Bam, who is, power forward center that doesn't really stretch the floor, which is not really what Giannis is used to playing with. When you think about the centers that he's played with, whether it's Brook Lopez or Miles Turner, or even the kind of power forward slash centers that he's played with, like Bobby Portis, who are all players who you can stick them in the corners and they can space the floor and be a threat from three. So I would, if Giannis ends up on the Heat, it's great for Giannis that he's in Miami, I guess, as opposed to Milwaukee. But I don't think that team has any shot at winning a title. I don't even think that team's got a better shot at coming out of the East than what Boston is right now or what the Knicks are. I just that seems like trading Miami for Milwaukee city life as opposed to actually trying to win the NBA Finals. Which, look, I don't blame you if you want to trade Milwaukee for Miami city life. That's, by all means, take a crack at it. You've done, your 12 years or whatever it is in Milwaukee. By all means, go get some sunshine and a beach, my guy. But as far as winning a title, Boston is the only place that I think makes sense between those two. But yeah, that's kind of it. I did. Boston, I think, has a legit chance to win the title. The Heat don't. That being said, I guess I should say from the Bucks' perspective, I'm not sure why you'd want Jaylen Brown unless he's coming with Joe Mazzulla and Derek White to flush out that system and to give you another rotation piece. Like, you don't have anything around, and I say all that to say obviously they could flip him to a third team, although you would think that Boston would have found that if that was the case, that Boston would have found someone who wanted Jaylen Brown and would have made this a 3-team deal already. But I swear I saw something earlier, and maybe they're just bluffing. But I swear I saw something earlier that says that the Bucks are that ownership of the Bucks wanted a star right now and is not interested in the idea of a rebuild, which I kind of get because you realize they don't own any of their own picks, which is why I definitely thought at the beginning of this, of the offseason that, or I should say late in the season, that Portland was certainly going to be in this running, although they seem to be more interested in Anthony Davis now than Giannis. But regardless, I think that's just I think that's crazy. Again, unless you find the third team that wants Jaylen Brown, which I'm not really sure who that could or would be. That's going to give you a bunch of haul. That's going to give you a big haul for Jaylen Brown certainly feels like you would get less of a haul for that than what you would have gotten if you had just put Giannis on the block. All right. But nonetheless, that should be resolved apparently tomorrow. So I apologize to keep looking away to make sure that I'm not saying this quite literally as it's as the news is being broken, which it doesn't look like it is. So I should wrap this up before I look like a complete fool who's out here talking about Miami or Boston when he's already shipped off to one or the other. So Spurs, Cameron Carr, Isaiah Evans, Giannis. I think Boston has a legit chance to win the title. I think the Heat do not. As far as anything else here that I want to talk about with the draft, I would take Debanza and then Boozer and then Peterson. All the stuff at Kansas I think is weird. I read an article from Ramona Shelburne. He had a full body cramp because of this creatine overdose, for lack of a better term. He was taken to the hospital and they couldn't say anything because of HIPAA and all of that. I don't think they're lying. I find that wild as a story in and of itself, just that a creatine overdose would send you to the hospital. I do find it surprising that story didn't break when that happened back during the season. That someone at the hospital in Kansas didn't recognize Darren Peterson. I find that hard to believe. And a bit remarkable that everyone just like kept their mouth shut about it. And I do find it a little hard to believe that the University of Kansas basketball program did not have the resources to figure out that it was creatine, that it was one of the most common supplements that people can take, and that I'm sure there are other players on his team that take it. That I find that really hard to believe. And so even if that stuff aside, like if he's having cramping or soft tissue injuries at 19, that would worry me in a league that is plagued by soft tissue injuries. That I just at 19, if that's not something that is he's fine with already, I just that would worry me. So I would take Debanza, I would take Boozer. I know there are athleticism concerns with Boozer, but I think really and truly, ultimately, he's 6'8". He can shoot the three, he can pass really well, and he will help you on the boards. Yes, you will have to find you will need to pair him with someone that can be the rim protector on defense. Yes, you will. You will, want that pairing as far as a big is concerned, a more athletic center, a true rim runner as opposed, to maybe like a Shingun type, right? But if at 6'8" you can space the floor, make really good decisions as a passer, and help on the boards defensively, that's a really valuable thing to be able to do. And I think that raises his floor a little higher than what I think folks are worried about in terms of his ability to be a contributor or not get played off the floor because of his athleticism or lack thereof. I get the concerns. We've seen players in college play bully ball and just be stronger and then that not translate to the pros. The one counter to that is usually when we talk about that, we're talking about guys that are 21, 22, 23. Now, we still have a bunch of COVID to get 25, 26, it seems like, right? We're talking about juniors and seniors, upperclassmen, grad transfers, who it's like, okay, are you actually good or did you just are you just in your grown man body against a bunch of teenagers? He's a true freshman, right? He's a true freshman who was one of, if not the best scorers and players, I should say, in college basketball this year. I think some of the athleticism concerns should be negated a bit by the fact that he did this at such a young age and immediately in college. So I would go Devanza, Boozer, and then Peterson, and then after that, take your pick if you really like Caleb Wilson or one of the 1 million billion guards. I will say this: of the 1 million billion guards, I do like Acuff the best. I think he's got legit upside as an offensive engine, and if you're going to be a small guard that gets hunted or could potentially have issues because of your size or effort in Acuff's defense, to be, or in fairness, I should say, with Acuff, not in his defense, actually, as a negative to him. But if those are going to be concerns, you need to be an absolute bucket and a facilitator, which is what he also is, a great passer, and be able to, generate offense for others, easy shots, play make for others out of the pick and roll, which he does better than I think any of the other guards in this draft. So I do like him the best, and so I will be. I think the Mavs should be looking to pair him with Cooper Flag if he falls to them at 9. I really like Acuff, but Devanza, Boozer, Peterson, and then of the guards, I really like Acuff. So thank you guys for watching. I will talk to y'all again before free agency with a off-season preview for the Spurs, probably specifically, and then maybe another one for the rest of the league. Comments below. Who do you think should go number 1? Am I off my rocker with Peterson or with Boozer over Peterson? And yeah, let me know what you think the Spurs should do at 20. Spurs fans, let's go. Thank you guys. Talk to you later.